Hey, what is up guys? Welcome to MST.TV. This is Nishi here. In today's episode, we are going to be taking a look at some cards that you guys should be looking to pick up within the next week or so before Rise of the Duelist takes over the meta. With amazing new strategies in the Dogmatica and the Infernoble Knights, as well as some casual strategies like the Melfi or the Gaia the Fierce Knight archetype, it can be really easy to get hyped up about the new cards that are coming out, but we can't forget to keep in mind some cards that are a bit older that you will need to pick up in order to fully take advantage of these new cards. Oftentimes, these cards can be overlooked because they are fairly cheap early on, but then before you know it, they've spiked in price. So it's important to be aware of what other cards you're going to need so that you can try to pick them up early. So in today's episode, we are going to go over some cards that you will definitely want to keep your eyes on and pick up sooner rather than later if you're looking forward to playing these new decks in Rise of the Duelist. Let's get started. Okay, so we'll start off by looking at the Invoked cards. I think that for the most part right now, when you think of the Dogmatica, you kind of automatically assume that you're playing them with the Invoked engine. The engine is super compact, and you can get into your Mechaba with really just one card. The two engines do complement each other extremely well. Of course, Yu-Gi-Oh! Players are no stranger to just how expensive yet viable the engine can be. We've seen the Invoked cards used with other engines in the past like Mech Knights and Shaddolls to relative success. However, we are fresh off a reprint of Invocation from Battles of Legend Armageddon, so the price of Invocation is actually much lower than what we've been seeing for the past few months at only around $20 a piece or so. I'd actually recommend picking up the Invoked engine now if you're planning on playing the Invoked Dogmatica deck. Invocation is a little bit pricey, but even other cards from the engine like Alistair, Magical Meltdown, or Invoked Mechaba, they're all relatively affordable at the moment, but definitely have the potential to increase in price considerably if the deck starts to pick up any sort of competitive momentum. Of course, you do have to be a little bit concerned about the possibility of the engine being hit on an upcoming ban list, but as long as events are postponed, I think you should be relatively safe. These are definitely cards that I would recommend picking up and holding onto, but just a single set of them so that you have the cards available for use. I definitely wouldn't recommend buying too many of them or hoarding excess copies, just in case we do see further reprints or ban list hits in the near future. Alright, so one of the key things that the Dogmatica engine can do that really makes them so unique is the ability to dump cards from your extra deck directly into the graveyard. Nadir Servant and Dogmatica Maximus each allow you to get key cards into the graveyard, which can trigger the effects of certain cards. Titanic Lad is a fusion monster that searches for a Dogmatica card when it's sent to the graveyard during the end phase, but that card is in Rise of the Duelist itself. There are, of course, other cards that you should be aware of and have readily available to use. Elder Entity Entis is one that we've talked about a long time ago on Market Watch. I actually think that we've talked about a lot of cards in this video on Market Watch before. That's beside the point. Entis simply allows you to pop a card on the field when it's sent to the graveyard. This can be a great way to get rid of problem monsters, floodgates, or just force your opponent to burn one of their many negations. Now, Entis actually came out a few years ago, but I can't help but feeling like it's going to be reprinted in maximum gold later this year. Definitely a card that you'll want to have one or two copies of for your own use. Hopefully you have some lying around if you opened those tins a few years back, but not a card that I would be trying to buy out or anything like that. Herald of the Arclight is a cool option if you want to try and play any sort of ritual deck with the Dogmatica archetype. I know a lot of people are hyped up for Nekroz Dogmatica, Nekroz being the best ritual archetype in the entire history of Yu-Gi-Oh! Herald is just a really free search for a ritual monster or a spell when it is sent to the graveyard, so really solid value there, and it was just reprinted in Battles of Legend Heroes Revenge, so the one that came out last year in 2019. Another option that came up while I was looking around at different things that seemed interesting is Wind Pegasus Ad Ignister, a card from Ignition Assault that came out as a super rare that no one really paid attention to. This effect is a little bit more situational, but while it's in the graveyard, if another card that you control is destroyed by battle or an opponent's card effect, you get to shuffle an opponent's card into the deck by banishing this card from your graveyard. So yeah, an interesting tech option that has the potential to activate in the damage step and can play around cards that you don't want to have to destroy, and it should be available for only like less than a quarter or so, so definitely something that you'll want to pick up early on. Speaking of cards to dump from your extra deck, the Shaddolls have a mini sort of engine that they use to help create really annoying first turn boards to try to prevent your opponent from playing the game. This revolves around the use of the new card Shaddoll Schism from Rise of the Duelist, which allows you to conduct a fusion summon of a Shaddoll monster using materials from your graveyard. Now in this combo, you can use App Cologne to add Shaddoll Schism from your deck to your hand, and then discard a card. Now if you want to, you can discard the Schism, then later on in your turn you dump Construct to the graveyard to add the Schism back for free. Alternatively, you can discard another card with the App Cologne and just keep the Schism in your hand. The idea is that you can banish App Cologne and Construct, or App Cologne and another dark monster with the effect of Schism during your opponent's turn to make Winda and limit them into only special summoning once per turn. I think that this combo is really cool, and though it does require 3 spots in your extra deck, you only need to play the 1 brick in your main deck. To be fair, I have seen some builds also try to play a bigger Shaddoll engine with Shaddoll fusions and like Shaddoll Beast or Shaddoll Dragon. That's entirely up to you guys. I actually feel like App Cologne has a pretty solid chance of being bought out within the next month or so, being a key card in the combo, especially if the deck starts to catch on, because it is only available from a structure deck that came out earlier this year, so there's very little chance of it being reprinted anytime soon. Winda has a few reprints, but I think that there's a chance that the secret rares could jump up in price as the card's highest rarity available as well. But yeah, while this combo may be a little bit more obscure or might only see some side deck usage, I definitely think it's really interesting, and it's a cool combo that you should be aware of so that you can either try it out for yourself or at least be familiar with how to play around it. One important thing to remember about the Dogmatica is that with Maximus, you force your opponent to send cards from their extra deck to the graveyard, and while this is normally a good thing because hopefully you're limiting the resources that they have available in the extra deck, it is something that can be played around. Therefore, if you're playing at an event and you're expecting a ton of people to be playing with the Dogmatica cards, it might be worth taking a few extra deck or side deck slots and dedicating those to cards that can help you when your opponent tries to resolve Maximus against you. It is worth noting that you can play Elder Entity Entis as well, so that you can get a pop if your opponent tries to make you dump something. However, a really cool card that saw some use over in the OCG is Cyber Dragon Nova, which states that when this card in your possession is sent to the graveyard by your opponent's card effect, you get to special summon a machine-type fusion monster from your extra deck. Fortunately, possession does include a card from your extra deck, so your opponent forcing you to dump something with Maximus and then you choosing Cyber Dragon Nova will actually trigger its effect. You can then use it to get an Invoked Mechaba onto the board for free, which is really cool because that can be an additional form of negation for you, even if you're going second and this is your opponent's first turn. This is a really cool play that does require 2 spots in your extra deck, or at least your side deck, and whether or not it actually sees play depends on how the meta evolves. If Dogmatica becomes something that is actually really running around everywhere, and if people start using this combo a lot, then maybe people will move Maximus into the side deck or something like that, and this won't be as valid. Either way, I think this is a really cool combo that you'll want to be aware of moving forward, especially if you are playing with the Dogmatica, because this is something that you'll want to either play around or hopefully be prepared for. Okay, so now we are looking at the Infernoble Knights. Obviously, in this set, we got some really big cards like the 2 Synchros and Ogier and Durandal. However, there are a lot of cards that are 100% necessary to play the deck that didn't come out in this set, so you'll have to do a little bit of looking back and digging to hopefully try to find some of these cards. They are definitely necessary in the deck though, so if you're wanting to play Infernoble Knights, make sure that you have these available. Isolde is one of the most important link monsters in the deck, right up there with Linkross probably, as it allows you to 1 search for a warrior and 2 special summon one from your deck. This card is basically what the entire deck tries to get into early on in order to get its combos going, and I believe that the standard builds actually play 2 copies of Isolde just in case one gets negated so that you have a follow-up for the next turn. Heritage of the Chalice is basically a copy of Reinforcements of the Army, searching for a Noble Knight monster or a Noble Arms card from your deck or graveyard and adding it to your hand. This, along with Durandal and Rhoda, gives you 7 searchers that can make the deck extremely consistent. I recommended picking up this card a month or so ago when it was only $1 or $2, and now they are up at $3 to $4 a piece. I could definitely see this card increasing in price up to $8 to $10 each if the Infernoble Knight deck does just as well here in the TCG as it did in the OCG. Either way, it is definitely a 3 of in the Infernoble Knight strategy, so if you're wanting to play the deck, it's a card you'll definitely need to have. One other key card here is Smoke Grenade of the Thief. This is an extremely old card from way back in Legacy of Darkness, and I believe it did have one other printing from Dark Beginnings 2 as well. This is just a one of in the deck since you can dump it with either Isolde or Roland, but it's definitely one of the most useful cards in the Infernoble Knight strategy, allowing you to look at your opponent's entire hand and then discard one of their cards to the graveyard. Not only does this put your opponent down a card, but the information that you gain from resolving it is really powerful as well. This card is, however, a pain to find, especially one that's actually playable because a lot of them are just so damaged because of how old they are. I actually found a few copies digging through the bulk at my locals over this weekend, so those were really great finds. If you can do that and no one else has dug them up yet, I definitely recommend doing so. But yeah, I could actually see this card being reprinted as an OTS common or something like that, but until we get some sort of confirmation of that, or until we get a reprint confirmed, you're going to need to pick up a copy of this card if you want to play the Infernoble Knight deck to its fullest potential. So with the Infernoble Knight cards that we're getting in the set, there are still a few other monsters that we're going to need to have access to round out the monster lineup. Hopefully, if you're going to build the deck, you already know what these are. So Immortal Phoenix Gearfried and Infernoble Knight Renault each came out in Toon Chaos, despite being from a structure deck over in the OCG. But each of them are cards that I definitely believe that you should be running at 3 in the Infernoble Knight deck. Gearfried has an incredibly easy summoning condition. You just banish an equip from your field or graveyard to summon it from your hand. It is very important though, because you get a monster effect negation by sending an equip card of yours to the graveyard, which is absolutely vital for when you're trying to do your combo and playing around Nibiru. I understand that you can dump it off of Ogier and then add it back off of Renault, but Gearfried I think is just too necessary to stop you from being blown out, that I would expect people are going to be playing it at 3, so I would grab your copies sooner rather than later. Infernoble Knight Renault is the other key card from Toon Chaos as a free special summon if you control a Fire Warrior, and then if you do, it turns into a tuner, setting up Needle Fiber or Synchro plays, and then it also fetches you back a Fire Warrior or an equip spell from your graveyard, so really useful there. These cards are a bit pricier, right? Gearfried is around $20 a piece, and I think Renault is actually almost at $30, but they're relatively new, and I think they are cards that you need to play 3 of if you want to play Infernoble Knights. They're just that good. Now, a couple of smaller cards that you'll want to watch out for as well. Sublimation Knight is the one card Isolde of choice for the deck. I think that you could argue that Neospace Connector and Aqua Dolphin are stronger, but Sublimation Knight gets the nod here because it's also a Fire Warrior, so it better synergizes with the rest of the cards in the deck. They are only $1 or so each, so make sure that you have your own set. And then finally, Fire Flint Lady is very similar reasoning to Sublimation Knight, right? It's also a Fire Warrior, but it's a free additional extender if you have any warrior monster on the field, so that's really cool as well. Fire Flint Lady is actually just a few weeks old, coming out in Battles of Legend Armageddon, but also something that you should pick up a set of, just in case, because it is such a low dollar investment. And finally, we'll take a second here to talk about some Melfi cards for those of you who want to try to play the deck. Obedient Scold should definitely be a no-brainer, as it can summon 3 monsters out of your deck for free. Thankfully, it was reprinted in Battles of Legend Armageddon, so make sure that you can grab your sets. Now, the other cards are a little bit more interesting. Number 64, Sandayu. This is the baby raccoon Xyz monsters that generates a token. This might be interesting if the deck goes into Noteria Beast or something like that first, and then you get to use this to generate another big monster, since it can help push for damage as well. It is worth noting that this card does only have 2 printings available, both of which are actually quite old, so grab this one before it becomes like a $10 rare or something like that. And then we have Rescue Cat and Rescue Rabbit. We've already started to see the high rarity versions of these cards spike, so the Turbo Pack Super version of Rescue Cat and the Secret Rare First Edition Rescue Rabbit. However, if you do want to play the holos, your choices are kind of limited. You'll be left with the Duelist Saga Ultra Rare Rescue Cat and the Super Rare Rescue Rabbit from the old tins. I don't know, personally, I'm not too worried about the Melfi or anything like that. I think they are cute, and a lot of people will probably try to do something with it because of how budget and affordable it is in Rise of the Duelist. So if you're one of those people, make sure that you pick up the cards in the rarities you want earlier so that you're not overpaying for a fun deck. Alright guys, that is it for today's episode. Rise of the Duelist is definitely a game-changing set. We have two really huge meta-relevant archetypes in the Infernoble Knights and Dogmatica, as well as some great generic staples in Triple Tactical Talents and Forbidden Droplets. Hopefully you guys have all of your stuff ready for when the set drops next week. Personally, I'm really looking forward to building and playing with Invoked Dogmatica, so hopefully I'll bring that to you guys in a deck profile video as soon as possible. Anyways guys, if you did enjoy today's video, please be sure to hit that thumbs up button for me, as it does help out a ton. Also make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Let me know what cards from Rise of the Duelist you guys are most looking forward to picking up, and what deck you guys are looking forward to using those cards in. And of course, if you guys haven't already, make sure you hit the subscribe button for all of the latest content from both Tombox and myself. And yeah, so until next time guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.